So, this is the case Commonwealth versus Brandon Brown. Okay, so I mentioned not too long ago that I had jury duty. And so my number was popped up. I was scheduled to be at trial on February the 6th. I reported to trial Monday morning at 8. And I get to the courthouse, get checked in, go upstairs. I see a bunch of people sitting in the room ready to go to court. So I didn't know what was what or who's who because I've never been a juror before. I've been through a jury trial and charged and stuff like that. I've been through all that, but never really been a juror. So we get into the courthouse, we get into the jury room. It's like maybe 30 of us. We stay in there for a good 30-40 minutes till everybody got there. We were watching, HGTV or whatever. And we all had to go into the court and be seated. So we all go into the court. They call names to get into the jury box. My name is the first name that's called to get into the jury box. So I'm the only black woman on the jury. It's the rest is a couple of Caucasian women. Um, Another black gentleman. He happened to be from, I think, the Caribbean. So it was just me and him, and then Caucasian people, and they were all wonderful. But I'm just letting everybody know what was the dynamics of the race of all of us, or whatever. So you had two blacks. You had one, two, the rest was white. The men were very helpful, all of them, and all of them were very knowledgeable. So they picked like 14 altogether. It was an older black lady, but she wanted to get out of jury duty. She didn't really want to be bothered with it because after everybody got called in the jury box and they eliminated and objected whoever they didn't want there, um, they were asking who had medical problems, and she was a little bit older. She didn't want to stand long or whatever, so her daughter came and got her. She didn't want to be bothered with it once she found out it was murder. And it was another guy who had already done a murder thing, but he was in a wheelchair, so he didn't want to sit long periods of time, so they eliminated him. So the prosecution comes up asking who's ever been in a situation or knows somebody in their family's been in a situation in domestic violence, any domestic violence situations and stuff like that. You know, then um, we get read the charges and who's charged with what, and then the trial starts. So as soon as the trial starts, the first witness was called, which is a female. Her name, I'm not going to give her name out because she's in protective custody. But anyway, she was called to the stand. She started off with, what was going on the day of the crime and stuff like that. And we just weren't getting anywhere. She was talking about how she was abused. She just kept on going on about how she was abused, but um, we have no police report saying that this woman was in a domestic violence situation. So when I get to court and I have the prosecution asking all juror members who had um, experienced domestic violence situations in families or whatever. Two or three of us raised our hand. I raised my hand because my sister had went through it. I just went through it 2 months ago. So I know the signs of it now. I know what it looks like. I know what an abuser, I can spot an abuser. Um, but not, well, yeah, I can spot it in women too. But I will say I was very, very biased in the beginning because of what I went through as far as this domestic violence. And I think that's why they eliminated everybody else and they kept me on and me and this other guy because we had experiences with domestic violence with family members and stuff like that. So the trial starts. Like I said, she's saying that, she got beat up, she was raped too, but we have no evidence of that. So that kind of like piqued my spider sense. Like, okay, we're talking about domestic violence, but we have no evidence that this happened and the police was called. So, the defense pointed that out because she had to object to the testimony. So the objections start flying. The prosecutor and the defense, start objecting. The judge started speaking to both, prosecutors, letting them know, okay, I'm sustaining this. You got to move on with this or whatever. So we are the going through the Commonwealth versus Brandon Brown. But the way the case is set up, there's three other people involved. Okay, there was poor police reporting. So it was kind of hard to figure out what the hell was going on. And then Brandon Brown's name thrown in the mix, and we don't have any evidence to point him anywhere, but he is supposed to be identified by the eyewitness that he is an accomplice to his brother in murdering her other baby daddy, and his brother is her baby daddy as well. So this girl was having, uh, she had kids by these two guys. So what happened was the Taekwon, who is Brandon Brown's brother, uh, was beat up by Gerard Richardson, who is an active gang member, according to Taquan, who is also a drug dealer. So he would know because both of them are in the street. So Taquan never been in any type of gangs. He's just plain old drug dealer. Um, so what it looks like is, okay, this is a domestic violence situation. She just called in the other baby daddy to police the other baby daddy, and it got out of hand, and Gerard was killed by Taquan. Okay, so the police tell what happened. They get called out to this hotel. um there's glass everywhere, um and no cars. So that's the first shooting. The second shooting happened down the street where Gerard was shot again in the door. So the officer, Mr. Branderberry, is from Colonial Heights, Virginia, which is a very small town. It's no gang violence there, nothing like that. Petersburg is next door where all the gang violence is. So what happened is all of that leaked over into that community because they came to get a hotel over there, and all of that transpired. But anyhow, so Brandon is implicated as the second shooter. But from the cameras that we were looking at from the hotel, we don't see Brandon. We do see Taekwon come from the back and come up on the car and shoot the windows out. And the gun had a silencer, so you couldn't really hear anything. You saw little flashes, but I wear glasses, so I couldn't see all that. But everybody else saw it, so that's pretty good. So, um, what else happened? So, Mr. Branderberry, um, they're looking for the car. That's, you know, the eyewitness said, that got away. You know what I'm saying? And there's another man on the scene. He's giving mouth to mouth to Gerard because Gerard is dead anyway. So, but he's trying to revive him because 911 is telling uh, the passenger, which is the female who is his baby mother, who's both of their baby mother. Um, they're telling her to give him CPR and tell the guy how to do CPR and all of that. Um, and this happened in 2021 during the COVID-19 pandemic. Um, Pretty much, uh, as I rewind back, Taekwon lives with um, the eyewitness Ashley. They live together. They're girlfriend and boyfriend, and they had some type of altercation, but the police wasn't called. So I don't even know what the hell went on over there because I can't say because the police wasn't called. So I can't get a report on anything. And when you got two people in a relationship, you don't know what the hell is going on. But she is reporting that, hey, he's been abusing me, but she never went to the police, never called anybody. And he lives with her. He has a key to the apartment. He's going home. He sees her coming home as he's going home. And she never stops. He beeps the horn to get her to stop. Because usually she stops, beep the horn and talk to him. But this day she didn't do that. So he goes upstairs to go in the house with his key. And every time he turned the key, somebody else kept turning it back. As he turned the key again, the keys turned back. So he calls her and say, hey, who's in the house? Because I can't get in the house. They keep turning. And she kept on saying she didn't know who was in the house and stuff like that. So what she told us, the jury in the court, is he was throwing all her shit off the balcony. She was trying to get somebody to help her. Nobody would help her, but she never called the police. So she calls Gerard. Gerard comes up there. Whatever she told him, he runs upstairs. He starts assaulting Taekwon. And that happened. Taekwon leaves. He calls two other known gang members. They chase him down the street. They jump him. Um, she's watching this whole thing. And so later on that night, I guess they all kept on, because it was a back and forth thing all day. So later on that night, somehow they all agreed up to meet in Colonial Heights at the cookout. I don't know how Taekwon got to the cookout, and I don't know how Ashley was going to the cookout too, if they both had been arguing the whole night. So that was confusing to me. Also, Ashley had said on the stand that she didn't call the police because she didn't want Gerard to get in trouble for breaking into her apartment. That was a red flag for me because I was like, do you have two men accessing one apartment? That's a disaster waiting to happen. So one had a key, the other one broke in. So she didn't want Gerard to go to jail for breaking in her apartment, which is what was the point of him breaking in the apartment? Anyhow, I didn't get that. So that's when red flags started going up for me because I was like, wait a minute, you got two men accessing one apartment. One has a key, one doesn't. One thinks he lives, one knows he lives there, and the other is there and broke in there. So that's where I was puzzled at, and I was trying to figure out how was this domestic violence? Like, I got called down here. I got to ask questions about domestic violence, and I have no evidence that this is domestic violence. I don't see. I see that she's distraught, but not as distraught as I she should have been. Like, if you if you seen your children's father head blowed off in front of you, you gonna do a little more crying than what she was doing. And I just didn't. I couldn't get with it. And I was just like, okay, this is. I thought it was me at first, just not getting it. But it was just too many questions, too many red flags, too many holes. So things more the more that they talked to her, the more things start to spill out where she was just like, he would always abuse me, he would do this, he would do that. But we're trying to get to the night of the shooting. Like, what did you see? You know what I'm saying? You know, what was Gerard doing? You know what I'm saying? So when Officer Brandenberry talked about when he came on the scene to do the investigation, Officer Brandenberry is acting as the first responder. A first responder, or the first people that get on the scene, they need all of that evidence on a crime scene. Well, he didn't have much to work from because Gerard kept driving because he did not see Taquan coming up from the back to shoot the window out. And so as they're driving off, he shoots the window out and Gerard gets hit in the back. So we Ashley is in the passenger seat. She said she didn't hear the window get shot out. She just seen glass and blood. Um, she was trying to help Gerard, because he was shot. She said when she looked up, she saw the second shooter shoot in the door and kill her baby daddy Gerard, who is the one she went and got to beat up Taquan. Okay, so I'm getting what's going on, and when I realized that she had three kids, um two by Gerard and one by Taquan. So I knew then, I was like, okay, this is a woman who has two kids by two different people. And I said, okay, I got this. Okay, I see how they're related. So we moved on because I was just like, how is this related and how is Brandon related to this? So Brandon is Taquan's brother and he's implicated as the second shooter. Okay, we find out that there's only one gun. We don't see the other gun. We only know that there's an extra bullet. They have footage of Taquan running from the scene, but they don't have all the footage. They just have the hotel footage of the car coming up, shooting the window out, and then they have the second shooting where the other car pulls up to the white car and fire the four shots in the door, which killed Gerard. Okay, all of that happened. We went through all that. We seen the footage, and we was just like, what? At that point, I was just like, what? How did I get here? Like, I thought it was a pettit jury, which I didn't really understand what that was, but I was like, I thought it was a pettit jury. I thought it was simple, something simple, but it wasn't. So, I made notes yesterday, so I'm just going to go over the notes. Miss White pointed out Brandon as she looked up from under the body of um, her daughter's father, because Gerard has two daughters by her. So these are all the inconsistencies that I'm pointing out as a juror of what I seen that were inconsistent, um, and why Brandon was acquitted because it wasn't enough evidence. So Mrs. White pointed out Brandon as she looked up from under the body of her her daughter's fathers. He was shooting, he had shot, he was shooting and he had dreadlocks. That's what she told them his identity. And she said it had to been Brandon Brown, which is Taquan's brother, because when I looked up, I seen him shooting in the car. But that didn't add up because Gerard's seat was all the way back, but Gerard was a big dude. He was really big. He was bigger than the other two men that she, said was there. Then we had two other people that were there as well who wasn't pursued. Um, so she said that she knew it was Brandon because he had dreadlocks. And she said his hair was down. They showed us a picture that didn't even look like Brandon. And I was like, that don't even look like the same person. And then we all had to establish, me and this Caribbean guy on the on the jury, we had to point out that when people have dreadlocks, their appearances change as the dreadlocks grow. So we had to rule that out. We couldn't take that testimony because we know how that works. Um, there was there was a bullet in the door panel. I think it was 4 bullets in the door panel, 3 in the seat, and 1 under the seat. 1 bullet under the seat. Um, Now she was, cross-examined and asked, was she sure she saw him? Come to find out, she has vision issues. So she said she had glasses on, but the other police officer corroborated that she didn't have glasses on, and she wear contact lenses. We don't know because how can I verify that you had contact lenses on, which is another issue. So she didn't have her corrected lens on. She had some lenses from the dollar store or something like that. That's what she said. So altogether, it was 7 bullets that went into the car and then the back window. Okay, so the prosecutor kept wanting to go and tell us how Brandon was associated with this case. And it took so long for her to get to the association of how he got into this case and how he would be how it would be a motive that he would do, want to kill this person or whatever, because he's the brother of the other baby daddy. So this is how Brandon got dragged into it. Um, Brandon and his brother weren't getting along at the time. Brandon and Miss Ashley got into it because you know, they were at the house or whatever, and they got into it. She told his brother kicked him out. They were going beefing back and forth, and they weren't even getting along. So Brandon gets picked up on the warrant after like a whole hour of investigation. He get picked up on the warrant 7 hours later, and he is the prosecutors showed us a little video of Brandon's interrogation, but they didn't show us much. They showed us like maybe 2 or 3 seconds, and then they cut it off. I picked up on that. I was like, wait a minute, I done seen first 48, and you usually get a lot of footage of a confession. Why are we getting only 2 seconds of a confession? That's when my spider senses went off and said, wait a minute now. The prosecution don't want us to see something or don't want us to know something. So we getting short clips of this. Um, we're missing like 2 other footages that the police officer who ran the case said he saw these footages, but they weren't introduced into evidence. And he testified to seeing a certain person on the camera, but we can't see it because we don't have the footage. So that was a lie. Um, Mr. Brandenberry, like I said, he didn't understand the scene of the crime. He didn't understand, so he went to the eyewitness, and he pretty much needed her to walk him through, you know, what am I looking at here? Why do I have these bullets? Because he said he had to remove the panel of the car to get the bullets out. And he counted all the bullets, put them in ballistics and stuff like that. And he didn't have a gun, so a few days later he go back and recover the gun. But he didn't send it to ballistics because it had been out there in the grass and all of that stuff, so he couldn't, I guess, extract any type of DNA off of it. They only got the bullets out of it and matched the bullets with the gun, with one of the guns. We don't know what the other gun is. Okay, so they expect us to come back with a guilty decision, and we don't have half of nothing. So what happened is, okay, Mr. Brandenberry, when he comes up, he sees a human hanging out the car. Okay, that's what he said. He sees a human hanging out the car at the other hotel that's blocking off people and stuff. So they need consent to, search the car and get everything out of there because it's a crime scene. Well, Miss Ashley didn't want them to search the car. She did not want to turn over Gerard's cell phones or her cell phones, but everybody else's cell phones was taken, like Brandon and Taekwon. And then they brought in cell phone analysts to analyze Taekwon and Brandon's phone networks and stuff like that, but they don't have Mrs. White's phone network. They don't have Taekwon's network. I mean, his phone records. But mysteriously, they don't have hers or Gerard's, which Gerard is dead, so I don't think they would probably been able to get them, but they needed the phones, and she did not want to turn over the phones. So one of the officers pointed out that Mrs. White, during interrogation, when they had the phones or requested the phones, she snatched the phone so damn hard that she broke a nail. So they realized that she was withholding certain evidence. I saw that anyway, because if you don't want to turn over the phones, she said she didn't want to turn over the phones because she had sent him nudes, and I kind of brought it at first, but when the other witness came in and said what happened, and we got half of his story, which his story was kept out by the prosecution because they wanted to make it look like it was domestic violence, but it wasn't domestic violence. It was some type of street justice shit going on that a female started. So we got this going on, and I'm here sitting like, okay, I've been called down to a jury duty, and I got a case that's got holes all in it, and I got a female that's she's being questioned about her testimony, and the defense is saying it's too many holes in her testimony, but the prosecution is going with it like, yeah, she did get abused. She did, they just running the whole thing, and she got abused. He was beating on her. He tried to rape her, but I'm like, okay, I need to see this evidence that this went on. Okay, did y'all report this to the police that he tried to rape her? Did any police come out? No police came out. She didn't call any police. He didn't call police. So how am I to take that as this is what was going on? So, so So anyway, Brandon has been sitting in jail since 2021. Okay, this was 2 years ago. The trial just came up Monday. So Brandon is pointed as the second shooter, but he's not on any cameras. All they have is cell phone towers to put him in the area, but we all discredit that because the cell phone towers and the GPS system is messed the hell up out here in Virginia. You can be following something on the GPS and you go somewhere and it's something else and it's not even the house that the GPS is listing. So I ruled all that out because I use GPS and the cell towers and the maps, all that's GPS and satellite and all of that stuff. And the the cell phone analyst came in, but we didn't have the cell phone expert. We didn't have that. We needed that, not the cell phone analyst. So that wasn't, we couldn't use that. We couldn't even use any of that to corroborate him being at the scene of the murder. Okay, Brandon had already went through a whole jury and it came out as a hung jury. So they retried him, and that's how I got on this jury trial because this was the retry. So we, we went through all of that. We didn't get Taquan, the other witness, until the second day, which was Tuesday. We didn't get his testimony because it was so many holes and so many parts of the story that was missing. When he came in and started telling what was going on, then it became clear to what was going on. And I was like, so it was an argument, but it was um it's not what she said it was. So the police were put all their hope on her because she was the eyewitness. But she had too many holes in her story. Her story kept changing. Um, she didn't know who was in the front of the vehicle. She just didn't have any recollection of what was going on, but she knew who the shooter was. And she looked up and she said she saw the shooter shooting in the car. They said she was injured, but she wasn't injured. Her knee got scraped or something like that. I guess that's what happened. So when they asked her, what were you doing when Gerard was driving the car? What was his reaction? And she was like, he was just driving. And then she was like, he started making this grunting noise. And she was like, she didn't know, she was just trying to eat her food. That's what she said. So he's grunting, and she said he's, holding himself, but he's still driving the car. And he drove the car 200 feet till he couldn't drive anymore, which means he drove until he died. So he kept driving, and then the car stopped. She's in the passenger side. She calls 911 10 minutes after the shooting, which was 12:10, because it was 12 o'clock in the morning. Um, it was 12 o'clock in the morning when the shooting started. So she she did all that. She went through all that, the testimony, and um, there was a flurry of objections. The prosecutor and the defense, they were all getting into it, and it was basically over holes in the case, people not turning stuff over. They don't have Gerard's phone records. She wouldn't turn them over. She wouldn't turn her phone records over, but everybody else got to turn theirs over. So pretty much not Gerard, but Taquan and Brandon are being railroaded, and they're not getting their part of the stuff put in the record so their innocent can be shown. It's not being done like that because it was made to look like it was domestic violence. And when I walked in the court, that's what I assumed it was, just from a glance and looking at all the paperwork and what they were saying the charges were. And they just made it look like Taquan was mad because she broke up with him and got with the other baby daddy when actually she was pitting both of them against each other. And one got their head blowed off. The other one is in jail for 58 years, and his brother almost got 50 years for being the second shooter. There was a second shooter. It's a cousin, but they didn't bring the cousin in. A lawyer called down to Mr. Brandenberry, said that they was going to make an appointment to bring him in. He didn't show up. So they didn't pursue that. They just stayed on the eyewitness testimony and what she was saying, that it's these two right here. These are the two. So, so I wrote notes, so I'm just gonna read them out. Um, so the defendant is pointing out masks of because of the pandemic and stuff. So they was asking her, "Are you sure he wasn't wearing a mask because it was the pandemic?" She wasn't sure. Uh, she kept on changing. I'm not sure. All I seen was a big gun and stuff like that. So during the shooting, Miss White sends a text to Taquan, which Taquan, she didn't know Taquan was coming up behind the car and shot the window out in the back. She didn't know that was him. He had a hood on. We saw it because of the camera surveillance of the hotel. So we're looking at this man walking up to the back of the car, and he starts shooting, but you can't hear it because it's got a silencer on it. They're driving away, so they don't even know they're being shot at. While he's doing this, she texts him and say, "Your brother just shot Gerard." And that's the text message that she sent off. And it was kind of similar to the Megan Thee Stallion situation, because Megan Thee Stallion, Chelsea sent a text to one of the bodyguards saying, "Hey, Tory Lanez just shot Megan Thee Stallion." So that I picked that up right there. I was like, wait a minute, this shit sound familiar. So that's another red flag. Um, so what stood out to me is I was like, well, did Gerard threaten um Taekwon? And I was like, we need her phone records and we need Gerard's phone records because we need to know what is going on, what happened. But we didn't have those things. And that kind of like threw me off, and it threw us all off, and we could not convict Brandon without proper evidence showing that he was on the scene, he was the second shooter, and how was he associated with your other baby father, who you said that they did the crime together. So Brandon, it just wasn't adding up, and we still couldn't understand how Brandon could have done any of this. So when we got all the case, when we got all the evidence and everything taken to the jury room, we looking at everything and we don't have any damn thing, and they want us to convict him. So all of us start pointing out, we made a list of all the inconsistencies in the case. And they said that Taquan's testimony wasn't credible, but it was to me because he um, he said some of the same stuff she said. Like she said that um, she said that Gerard came to the apartment and Taquan said he came to the apartment and beat him up. She said that happened. She was sitting in the car watching them fight. So that was truthful. Both of them corroborated that. So I was like, okay, so how is Taquan not credible? And everybody's, well, I don't believe what he's saying. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, how not? So me and the other guy, we talking and we looking at things and we like, okay, y'all got to look at everything. Because some of the women was like, well, we don't need to see all the text messages. No, I said, the hell we don't. I need to know what's going on. I need to see everything because I'm not convicting anybody if I don't see the evidence I need to see. I just wasn't seeing it because I was just like, if you're saying this guy helped his brother kill this other person, then I need footage. And the police officer said that he saw the footage of them running for. Okay, I need to see that. We don't have that. Taco Bell won't turn it over. Sweet Charms won't turn theirs over. Okay, well, they're stopping the investigation, or we don't have enough. So, they're looking for the car. They couldn't find the car that they said that they committed the crime in. But Mr. Branderberry says he knows the car because he drives the same car, which I don't even know how the fuck that got to do with anything. Why is that even a part of the criminal case? Because he drives a car like that. What the fuck does that mean? So that was another red flag for a lot of us in there because we was like, what the hell? They didn't find the car until like a week later. They didn't search it. It was just really poor police work. They acted like they didn't care. They thought, they was just going after whoever. They just want to put whoever in jail because it was brought over into another jurisdiction. They just want to get rid of it. So when Taquan came in, he started confessing that there is an active gang and he is an active gang member, which they did not investigate this. So I'm like, am I walking into a fucking case with some gang shit going on? And I knew it was because when the way that they were shooting and shit, and Mr. Brandenberry was like, well, it kind of looks like a drive-by, but he had to go to the eyewitness and ask her what it was. She explaining it what it was, but she's the one that started the whole thing. So why are we talking to her anyway? Because she has an interest in the damn case. And everybody kept saying, well, we can't say that. And I said, the hell we can't. She framed the whole damn case. I'm like, the other, defense attorney is going at her saying you started this whole thing. And at first, when I came in there, I kind of was kind of mad because she was doing that, but she did it for a reason. She was trying to say, look, you started this whole thing. You need to take responsibility for this because you did start this whole thing. You sent a slurry of text messages to your other baby daddy and told him to come beat up the other baby daddy. And now the other baby retaliates and blows the head off of the other baby daddy. And you're sitting here telling me that um, your baby daddy was shot by his brother as well, who's supposed to be the second shooter. So when we get into the back, we look at Brandon's confession because we want to see, because we didn't believe nobody. The police was lying. She was lying. The damn police officer lied under oath. We caught that. So everybody lying. So we like, well, let's look at Brandon's confession. We're looking at Brandon's confession, right? They only showed like 1 second of confession when we was in court. But when we get to the jury room, everybody was like, well, let's look at Brandon's confession. So we looking at it, and we looking at it. As soon as he tells Brandon why they picked him up, Brandon immediately starts saying, I don't know what the hell this is. I don't know what the fuck y'all talking about. I don't know none of this. And then when he read to him the charges and he told him it was murder, it was conspiracy to commit murder, shooting in a occupied vehicle, and a murder. So Brandon immediately starts breaking down, crying and saying, what are y'all talking about? And we saw that and was like, wait a minute. This shit is not correct. And Brandon kept saying the whole time, I don't know what you're talking about. I ain't had nothing to do with that. I was here this night, and he had an alibi because he had a girlfriend. And the girlfriend was there, and she was telling, in her alibi, how she found out what was what, because she saw on the news that Brandon had got arrested. But she also understood that her and Brandon had saw each other that night, so she was the alibi. But they actually wasn't believing anything she said because they thought that Brandon was just lying and he just found some female to say they was together. But come to find out, she was really credible too. Um, she knew where they was. She knew what time it was when they got out the bar. They didn't come to the bar together. She was already there. She saw Brandon there, and they were talking to each other for a minute, and all of that. Everybody was trying to dismiss that, but when the cell tower analyst came in, it put Brandon near the cell tower where the club was where they were. So that stood out to me that he was near the liaison where he said he was. Um, but they were trying to say where the crime was 4 minutes away. But again, we don't have Brandon on any camera doing anything. So um, once I seen that, I was like, okay, something's not right here. And I was like, okay, well, is this domestic violence or what? I'm like, what the hell is this shit? Because I'm like, y'all talking about domestic violence shit. Y'all asking us, have we been in domestic violence situations or been around family members who have domestic violence? Okay, that's what we're looking for. I don't see any evidence of domestic violence though. And I don't, and then we're talking about a murder and y'all saying this and that, but we don't have enough evidence to even corroborate any damn thing because things are being hidden, taken out, or not, just pure obstruction of justice right at this point. So, Brandon, let's see. Taquan's lawyer did not get his phone records. Um, was pretty much being lazy, didn't want to get anything or didn't do anything. And he needs to be reported to the Bar Association here in Virginia because he didn't do anything. Because they were asking him why did we got your phone records and stuff like that. And he was like, well, my lawyer didn't. And I was like, okay, the lawyer just denied the jury half of the other fucking story because he didn't get none of this shit. And that's why we don't have it. So I said, this is what happens when people don't do their job. So, um, so when Taquan came out and testified, he talked about how they was going back and forth, her texting back and forth, her and him texting back and forth. And at first, I was like, okay, well, this in the first day, I was like, okay, this is just domestic violence. So, um, when he went through his testimony, Taquan, and he talked about the text messages, and then when I looked at the text messages, he was like, when they got into the argument, he told her he was coming to get his shit and his bro was going to come. So she texts back and say, you and Brandon better not start no shit. And they going back and forth, back and forth. And then when the shootings happens, she then tells them Brandon Brown shot my baby daddy. I looked up and I saw him shooting at my baby daddy. Brandon Brown did it. Brandon Brown did it. I know it. Brandon Brown did this. But we can't corroborate Brandon. We don't see. She didn't. She don't know who was doing what. She didn't see. All she seen was a gun, and all of this stuff. So it's pretty much what we did was we went in the jury room. We just wrote out all the inconsistencies. We didn't think she was credible because her story kept changing. Brandon's story was consistent. Taquan was consistent. Taquan backed up everything she said from what happened with the fight at the house, that the police were not called to. Nobody got arrested, nothing. Um, she did slip up and say that Gerard broke in the house. She didn't want him to get in trouble for breaking into her apartment. Um, and then Taquan had a key to the apartment. So two people had access to one apartment. But one, I think, was she was trying to set him up because he was going to go in the apartment, and Gerard had already broke up in there waiting on him. So we looked at all the inconsistencies. We all came up with, do we have enough to really convict this man? And we all had to unanimously say that we didn't have enough to convict because we don't have anything. We don't have the other gun. You know what I'm saying? Mr. Branderberry didn't send the first gun to the lab to do anything. All they did was took the bullets and sent it to the lab to see if it matched the gun that killed the person or whatever. They used another bullet that they found and assumed that it went to the other gun. Like I said, Mr. Branderberry's reporting was very poor because he didn't know what he was looking at, because he doesn't know Petersburg. He doesn't know anything about gang culture. He only knows what, goes on in Colonial Heights because he grew up there. And over there, there's not gang violence or anything. So he didn't know what he was looking at. He asked this young lady who concocted all this shit to tell him what was going on, and he didn't understand he was being misled. So after all of this, we go through all of that. We don't see anything that can put Brandon at the scene as the second shooter. His brother had already confessed to the shooting. Um, the cousin was there too, but they couldn't get a warrant for the cousin, and the cousin's still walking around. And actually, after we dismissed the charges, as I was going out, the family was talking to me. One of the cousins said that the cousin is still riding around, doing what he does. The police just have not pursued him. So, that's pretty much the whole case here. Like, it was a case of a female who was trying to get revenge on the whole family, and she used her other baby daddy as a tag dog, and he got killed because Taquan knew him as a gang member, and he said, "Where I'm from, if a gang member threatens you, you are going to get killed." So he responded in kind. So street justice um, took his place. No police was called. She orchestrated it, and there you go. I had to be a juror to that. And I was so pissed off because I was like, you call me down here. I can't go home. And if I don't come, I'm going to go to jail. I have to sit in this room all day with 11 other people, and I have to bring a conviction, and I don't have enough information. And I'm like, really? You think I'm going to? No. So we all unanimously came up and said, we cannot put him at the scene of the crime. We cannot convict without enough evidence showing that he was there. I need footage showing that Brandon shot into your vehicle and killed your other baby father. I need to see that. You said he was the second shooter. I need to see it. And I need to know why the prosecution is taking us around the mulberry bush to tell us how Brandon is associated with this case. And it took forever for them to pretty much corroborate association. And they basically saying, well, Brandon is Taquan's brother. He lived there for 3 weeks. Taquan and Brandon's brother has a baby by her, and whatever the case may be. And it it just turned into chaos. And it's hazardous when you let two men, one's a gang member and one's a drug dealer, into a property. You let both of them have access to that property. So what were you doing? What were you thinking? And she doesn't do drugs, or she says she doesn't do drugs or drink. But when I looked at the text messages, when he texted her that day, we were reading the text message, she said she was drunk. So I said, oh, no, that's another lie. I kept seeing too many inconsistencies in her text messages and shit. And a lot of the white women was like, we don't need to look at them. I said, yes, oh, yes, the hell we do, because I need to know what is going on. I'm not sitting here and going to convict some man to 50 years and I don't have enough evidence. And we was going back and forth for it a little bit because a lot of the women had brought into it, and I had brought into it until I started seeing a lot of the red flags and how she would not turn over Gerard's phone, because I believe Gerard did throw, he was the first one. He was the one that sent the text to Taquan because he wanted Taquan out of the home. Instead of her telling Taquan to just leave, she brought him over there to put him out, or whatever the hell is going on. And all this shit transpired. And I actually the only black woman on the jury. Everybody else are men or Caucasian. So I didn't appreciate that, because don't call me to jury trial and you give me a half-ass case. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. So that is pretty much what went on. This young lady um, called one baby daddy to get rid of the other baby daddy, and it didn't turn out well for one of them. And the brother got grabbed into it because he's guilty by association. He's his brother. So that's what happened in the Commonwealth versus Brandon Isaiah Brown. Brandon was acquitted, and this is his second trial. He had a hung jury the last because they probably couldn't convict because they didn't have enough evidence. It came again to us, and we back at the same situation. We don't have enough to convict. So Brandon, he should be out of jail now, because that was at 3 o'clock this afternoon. So he should be on the way home. He been in there for 2 years, just wanting to go home. And after we read the verdict, he started crying. His family was crying, and it was just really, really emotional. And I'm just happy to see somebody go free that had nothing to do with anything. And I don't even know how the hell he got dragged into his brother and his girlfriend's confrontation, all because she thought that his brother was the second shooter. It was not, it was just too much. It was too much, and then none of it made sense. Like, the jury, we got to do reasonable doubt, and we didn't have enough for reasonable doubt. We didn't have it. So that's the way to go. And then also to 2014, I was sitting right where Brandon was sitting. I was sitting right there. I had 4 felonies, and I was in a jury trial, and they was trying to get my ass. So I know what time it was, and I was innocent. They couldn't find anything on me, and that was the same way with Brandon. I noticed that they couldn't find not one thing on him, not one thing. He had a felony, but he'd been out of trouble for a while. And he kept saying on the confession video, I have a felony. I can't do crime. I don't touch guns. I don't pick up guns. He said, only time I broke the law one time is I took some drugs. And I was like, whoa, if somebody's saying all that, then they telling you that, they're innocent is, pretty much important. So he was like, and they was like, well, did you go to a hotel anytime in 2021? He was like, I have a stable home. I don't need to be at a hotel. And he was like, I don't do stuff like that. Like, I live with my mother. My mother's taking care of me because I do have some mental issues. You know what I'm saying? So that's another issue I picked up on. And I was like, okay, what in the hell? And it was just terrible to see that going on. And to see a female so diabolical and created this whole mess. and then not take responsibility for none of it. She just wanted to get them gone. And then when we had to go back and play the body cam where she was, at the scene of the shooting, and she kept on saying, "I believe it's Brandon Brown," and we like, well, we can't go by "I believe" or "I think." It has to be, "I know it was Brandon Brown who shot him and killed him." And she didn't have it. And then her confession and everything else was all over the place. Then she didn't want to give up phones. Um she didn't want to let them search the car. And then I looked at the text messages. When she texted Gerard, she said, "Y'all shot my baby up, my car, my baby." And I'm like, wait a minute, your baby daddy just got his head blowed off and you talking about your car. That's another red flag I saw. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be a part of this. I was like, it seems like she has revenge for both of them, and I'm not getting it. Because she had got into an argument with both of them. And I'm like, oh no, you're not going to use me to convict people that you are mad at. You're not going to use me to do that. So that's what happened. 3 days of jury trial. Yep. The Commonwealth versus Brandon Brown. So Brandon is 28 years old, um, and he got kids. He is going to be free to take care of his kids. His brother will never see his child again. The other one won't see the two little girls either because he's dead. So children have lost their fathers, and the only ones that are going to have their father is Brandon's children because he had nothing to do with nothing. He actually separated from his brother. His brother came into the court and said, "Me and him not even getting along. We're not even talking." So why would he be accomplished to me with me doing this? And he was like, "I did this because a gang member threatened me. And once that happens here where I live at, you take that serious." So that's the street justice. And he's going to have to do his time. He got 58 years. So that's what went on. Tell me what you think. Like, share, subscribe to Long B. Have a great day.